Record.
Got it.
Welcome to Chowder and Grits, the podcast for Virginia Tech and ACC sports. I'm Justin Cochiola alongside Tim Hirth. It is Thursday, November 18th. And there's something big to talk about. Justin Fuente has been relieved of his duties. We're going to break that down, talk about, what that means for the Hokies, what's next. We'll look at Duke in that game a little bit. We'll preview Miami. We'll bring you our Week 12 ACC picks. We'll go around and recap Week 11. But before all that, Tim, what's going on?
Oh, just same old here in Hokie Town. I'm assuming we're going to have a great pod, but I want to be sure we don't lose sight of the fact that we're a week away from Turkey Day as of the day that this recording goes out. So we need to give the best holiday on earth its due. And I certainly look forward to eating myself silly and watching a whole lot of football. And we're almost there. We're almost there, Justin.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the slate of games yet. I know the Lions are playing the Bears. So yes, we could only hope the Lions get their first win of the season on Turkey Day, which I really hope they do.
Yeah.
The Cowboys, I have no idea who they're playing. And then there's that late game now too. So I don't know who's playing that this week, or next week, I should say, but we'll find out.
What's the late game?
What's the go-to for you on Thanksgiving this year? What are you looking forward to the most?
I don't know. I'm one of those weird guys that likes the green bean casserole. I mean, that's nowhere near the top of my list, but I am an all sides, almost no turkey guy. Turkey's okay,
yeah,
but turkey is the blank canvas that the rest of the sides kind of do their thing on. So mac and cheese is great. Dressing is awesome. Stuffing, if that's what you call it. Love it. Can't wait for it. My Nana's got a special recipe that she typically or used to make when she was here. R.I.P. Nana. That's fantastic. You only get it once a year. And I'm going to hustle up some of the best gravy ever this year. I'm going to make sure to use the giblets in the turkey neck. Get it all nice and flavorful. So no, man, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if I have like a one favorite other than pretty much all of them equally. And ham, when ham shows up, it's always a great Thanksgiving.
See, that really makes me happy is to get that ham out there. Cause the ham always kind of carries home the plate for me. I'm a big ham guy.
Me too.
I always go for the turkey leg. I think that's a fun thing to eat on the turkey. You don't get it very often. You just got a big old turkey leg and you're just sitting there feeling like a man.
Dark meat is superior to white meat in every regard. So
especially on turkey.
Oh yeah.
Especially on turkey. Yeah. The thing with turkey is it's so easy to dry it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where you go wrong with the turkey. So
yeah,
I deep fried it one year, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And that was good. That was pretty solid. But yeah, we're going to go over to the sister-in-law's house this year. So, we'll see what's in store, but I'm looking forward to those sides.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
There's that one car that always goes by at this point every night. I don't know what it is, but it sounds like it's got like an outboard boat motor attached to it.
Yeah, I could hear it faintly.
Yeah. It's the only car you'll ever hear out here because the road's quite a ways down, but
so let's jump into it, Tim. Justin Fuente era is over.
Boom.
It's over. So it's come to an abrupt end after 6 years, almost 6 full seasons. Whit decided enough is enough, and it sounds like this had probably been in the works for a while, trying to negotiate the buyout. Sounds like they're going to do a lump sum, which is probably why the buyout came down. Otherwise, there's really no reason to agree to it if you're Fuente. But it's interesting to look back on because the Fuente era started strong. 19-8 in his first 2 seasons, an ACC Coastal title in 2016, ACC Coach of the Year in 2016, had the come from behind Bell Bowl victory, recruited Gerard Evans in 2016. And really recruiting wise, the first 3 years, 17, 18, 19, they were on track.
Yeah.
for what a normal Virginia Tech program is, which is a mid-20s recruiting, 20, 26, 24, 26 respectively. But then after that, that's when things really started to kind of go awry. And then, of course, there was a contract extension thrown in there, which complicated things. And after the 19-8 start, he finishes 24-23 in his career, his final 4 seasons.
Yeah.
A losing record against FBS schools. Losses to Old Dominion, Liberty, Duke, Syracuse. The Old Dominion loss was you were a 29.5 point favorite and lost to a team that ended up winning 4 games. So It wasn't even a good Old Dominion team. Liberty was a good Liberty team. So you can kind of get past it. It's Liberty. It's that kind of thing in your head, right? It's Liberty should never be Virginia Tech. Old Dominion had no business beating Virginia Tech that year. You had the 76th ranked recruiting class in 2020, 43rd in 21. Little to no focus on in-state recruiting. Brought a Texas mentality, which resulted in a number of 3-stars, a whole lot of decommitments, or short-term stays that barely lasted a year. Then on top of that, you had the anointed quarterback whisperer, but next to no development at the position.
Yeah.
And he only had one quarterback start more than 7 games in 2 seasons. And he was here for 6 years.
It's atrocious.
So just think about that. That guy was Hendon Hooker. Obviously, he developed him really well. If you've been paying attention, we've talked about that. You had a multitude of distractions with your coaching staff or bad hires, Mike Nizolek, I think I'm saying that right. If you're on Twitter, you know who he is. Roanoke Times had a really interesting and damning story today.
Yeah, he did.
I recommend you go read it. The article titled "How Former Virginia Tech Coach Justin Fuente Found Himself to Be a Man on an Island." And there was a blurb in there about Brad Cornelson, which was absolutely wild. And it was basically from a source, anonymous, talking about how Brad would basically rip Burmeister for making a solid play, but throwing to the guy who he wasn't supposed to throw to. So apparently Brad is such a micromanager. You go into every play knowing exactly where you're going to go with the football.
Loves the
Also
minutia.
wouldn't allow Burmeister to do any option reads.
Sounds similar to some things that we've heard as far as getting ripped from Gerard Evans from a certain interview on Don V Fridays. That happened in the beginning. This is happening towards the tail end, what we're reading now. Frustrating because, and what kind of blows me away, Justin, is this isn't an issue that someone on the staff shouldn't have been able to speak up about, or at least mention and say, hey, you know what, defense or offense should be able to look at this and say, guys, I'm not sure taking the read out of the read option is the way to do this. Because what you're doing essentially is you're turning a read option into a predetermined play. The strength of the read option is being able to, on the fly, decide whether you want to keep the ball as a quarterback or hand the ball.
It's not a read option if you're not letting the quarterback read it.
Right.
It's just a handoff.
It's just a
designed
handoff.
run.
And what may be more appalling, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, I don't know if you got to it on the quote or not, was the part on dictating which receiver the quarterback would throw to on each play, which is almost impossible to understand. There are many times where we've said over the past 5 years, we always seem to have one read quarterbacks. Now I'm not sure whose fault that is. We talk about the lack of development at the quarterback position. How the hell do you expect a quarterback to develop when you won't even let them go out there and play the damn position? Blows my mind. Honestly, makes my blood boil a little bit. And I don't want to hear ever again about the quality of Justin Fuente's ability to manage a football program, more specifically an offense. Because if you can't sit there and it's an elementary understanding of the sport of football and how this offense works, the literal play it's predicated on, and say we are completely neutering this and we're killing our quarterbacks. Justin, that's one of the most damning things I've ever read about any offensive coordinator in college football and pro football. I mean, what do you?
I don't know how you can read that and ever hire that guy to be.
That's what I mean. It's negligence.
Anything other than a positional coach. And he needs to stay away from the quarterback position.
Well, oh yeah, he's poison.
Unfortunately, we've got 2 more games of Corn because he's still there. But the end is near. You know, I think the thing that really stood out there for me was you saw it this week with Fuente and players coming out and supporting him. And, you know, I don't think any of the players had an issue, at least that are there right now, with Justin Fuente.
Doesn't seem that way.
But the big issue with Fuente has been his management and oversight of the program. And that kind of full circle back to Mike's article here in the Roanoke Times, The Man on the Island, is Fuente didn't want to engage with anybody. He wanted to do it his way. He wanted to communicate how he wanted to communicate. He didn't want to engage the fan base. He didn't want to engage former players. He didn't want to engage donors. He didn't want to engage recruits. And that could work at a place like Memphis where, to be quite frank, nobody really gives a shit.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Okay. Memphis is a basketball school. You know, you can do that at Ball State. Okay. You can do that at Kansas. Nobody cares. If you do anything, you're applauded. Oh, right. Wow. Great. Oh, wow. We won 8 games this year. Oh, we're in the AAC championship. Oh, phenomenal. That's great. That's great news. Well, when you're at a school like Virginia Tech, it's different. And I think that's where Fuente, just for whatever reason, was unable to grasp it. And he got better towards the latter part, but it still wasn't good. It still wasn't anywhere to where it needed to be for a program like Virginia Tech. You have to be a guy who is going to engage the community, the fan base, former players, recruits, or else you're not going to make it. It's just not going to happen because you're the CEO. You're going to be less X's and O's when you're the head coach. Now, I'm not saying that you need to stand there and just be a statue on game day or during practices. Like, you need to have management over your staff. And that's where he also failed. That's where he also failed.
Yeah.
Because he refused to make the hard decisions.
Well, and the thing that really caused a rift early was exactly what you talked about, because it was the opposite of the way it had been done under Frank Beamer, which was a welcoming family program, very open, great when it comes to alumni relations. And then as if it hit a fork in the road, it completely changed seemingly overnight. And that never sat well with anyone. The recruiting thing is even harder for me to understand, Justin, because it honestly feels as if
it shouldn't be, though.
We didn't,
because that it goes to the high school football level. The coaches, he
Agreed.
Didn't engage.
Agreed. But we got to the point where, honestly, if it seemed like a kid wasn't interested in us, we didn't even try to recruit him. We just let him go where they were going to go. And all of a sudden, we're recruiting the same 2 and 3 stars in Texas that we have down the road from us. For what reasons? And nothing irritated me more. What class was it? 3 years ago, maybe we had 2 or 3 players from the state of Virginia in our recruiting class. That should have sent
there was, I think, 19. We had 1.
Yeah, 1 maybe it was. That should have set off alarm bells falling off the ceiling that we were massively stepping in it. And we continued to accept this closed off nature of the football program. We continued to accept what was clearly recruiting, and I won't mischaracterize it. We'll say that there were attempts made at some bigger players, and we were really trying to put up a fight with some people, but it surely didn't seem like it. I'll tell you another big issue for Fuente, for me, and this goes in the face of, and it's one of my reasons why when we talk about reasons or what kind of traits we're looking for in our next head coach, this is a big one for me. Fuente was one of the worst coaches at hiring assistants that I may have ever seen at the Power 5 football level. You talk about a guy that hired assistants that lacked the experience recruiting that you needed to make a huge impact, especially when the results started to turn around and we really started to fall on our face recruiting. And we had a chance 2 years ago to really address that, and we didn't do it. And now you see a guy that's hiring, well, he's leaving Brad Cornelson in a position when he's clearly over his head. He's not making proven recruiting hires at position coaching positions that he can use to bolster a weak recruiting staff. He didn't do it. He went with, okay, give me the coaching experience guy versus the guy that is a proven recruiter that will go out there and get after it. And he didn't do it. And that speaks to his inability or his uncomfort with managing a football program in quote unquote big boy football. And he managed Virginia Tech like we were a group of 5 school for 6 years. And this is what you get now. And there will be a lot of digging out of a hole with this program. Thankfully, because of the transfer rules that have been implemented, you could argue that maybe it won't be quite as long of a rebuild as it would naturally be. But my goodness, I really can't get over what position we were put in. And when we read that article, we already knew most of these issues. But when you see it summed up like that, it's hard to imagine the multiple levels of failing that occurred, both administratively and internally with Fuente, to allow the football program to get here. Because there were a lot of these issues that Whit Babcock should have picked up on if he had been, in my opinion, looking at the right things with the football program and trying to get corrected. Now, in his credit, I think some of that started to happen towards the tail end of the Fuente era. But, there were some times where you could look at some of these resumes and some of these coaching hires and sit down and say, hey, man, do you need more money? What's going on? Because a lot of people want to throw out in this coaching search, Virginia Tech doesn't pay its assistants money. These guys are getting paid what they're worth. I mean, if Fuente needed more money, he could have asked for more money for an assistant or two.
But I mean, too, if you look at it, like Fuente is one of the highest paid coaches in the ACC.
Exactly.
So it's not like Virginia Tech is trying to work on a budget that is fit for, Indiana State. Like, that's just not accurate. And if you look at the facilities that have been upgraded, over the last couple of seasons, like, there's plenty of money pumping in there. It's like, yeah. Do we have Alabama money? Do we have Texas A&M money? No. But guess what? Money doesn't solve your issue.
We got McDonald's money. That'll get us something, man.
It just doesn't. It's nice to have, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. Going back to the community thing, looking at some of these jobs, first, let me talk about this. I think the thing to look at with Fuente is, even though it got bad at times, there were critical points to where it felt like it was turning around. So we go to the 2019 season after the embarrassing loss to Duke. It's the year after the Old Dominion loss.
Right.
And the best hire he made, in my opinion, was Jerry Kill. And he was there as a consultant, essentially. And that really kind of turned that season around. Things started to change. And then Jerry Kill left, and it literally just went back to what it was. But I think Whit gave him 6 years, which is an eternity in today's age. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. And I mean, I'm not like happy Fuente got fired. Don't get me wrong, because that means Virginia Tech failed. That means Virginia Tech is in a bad situation right now. It's in bad shape. You hire a coach, you want it to work out, but coaching's hard. Most coaches fail at the Power 5 level. Now, some coaches have success. They're not having national champions. They're not winning national championships. Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, Dave Dorn at NC State, Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, Paul Chryst at Wisconsin. Like, those guys are building nice programs. Paul Chryst can occasionally have a shot at a college football playoff. Hasn't gotten there yet. But they're winning 9-10 games a year doing what they're supposed to be doing at these kinds of programs. And when you're at these programs, when you're not at the traditional blue bloods or these programs that just have gobs of money, like, that's That's your goal. Your goal is to compete. Your goal is to win your division or your conference, compete in the conference championship game. And then if you are lucky enough to put it all together, you've got a shot at competing for a national championship, which will then turn into a playoff, which is 4 teams right now, which is a joke, but then into an expanded playoff, which will be, 8, 12 teams. But for whatever reason, for Fuente, it just didn't work out. And there are very few schools that are going to expect national titles every year. And most of those schools that do aren't even close right now. You look at USC. They've been bad for years since Pete Carroll left. Trash. Left them with sanctions. Texas, they just lost to Kansas. 1-8 Kansas. Texas A&M, probably the school that has underperformed the most of any college in America, if we're being honest. When we look at resources, when we look at expectations, it is the wealthiest fan base, alumni base, I should say, out there, because it's a huge university. You're sitting there right in the heart of Oilville, Texas, and you've got just people that can burn cash and don't care. They don't win. They don't even win their freaking division. And so it's like, these schools expect national titles. Michigan, Penn State. Where are they at?
That's a good question. Not in the national title game.
Not in the national title game. Barely sniffing it.
Yeah.
And you get the benefit of the doubt when you're Michigan, and you leapfrog Michigan State in the polls when each of you have a loss, but your loss is to Michigan State.
Yeah.
That's the benefit that you get when you're a blue blood, I guess, when you're like Michigan. So my point is, BT is not that type of program, but I firmly believe it is a program that has the ability to win a national championship. We've already seen it before. They've gotten to a national championship. They lost the game, 46-29, to Florida State. But it all has to come together at the same time, which is very difficult to do. And there were plenty of defenses that were national championship caliber under Frank Beamer. They just didn't have the offense to go with it. And so you saw losses, or you saw disappointments. But I think the Hokies they're just in a rut right now. And that happens across college football. If you look at all these different programs, it happened to Alabama in the 90s and early 2000s. Alabama was nothing. They sucked. People were going into Alabama's backyard, and they were taking any kind of recruit that Alabama would never have an issue getting. Now Alabama's up, obviously. They're the program in the country. Mm-hmm. But it's going to come back down eventually. It will. It's just inevitable. It's going to happen. It happened to Notre Dame. It's happening to Texas right now. It's happening to USC. It happens to everyone. And I think right now, you got to look at Virginia Tech as a microcosm in the historic aspect of college football, because they didn't get to big boy football until year 5 or 6 under Beamer, when they finally got into the Big East. So the sample size is small. And basically from 95, 96, all the way through 2011, when's the last season that we qualified for a, New Year's Six Bowl or whatever they were called back then. We haven't been there. It's been about a decade. It's been 10 years. And we can get out of it. You just got to start making the right hires. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm with you. I mean, I don't think no one in Virginia Tech's fan base has expectations of national titles. But the beauty of the way the college football playoff is set up, and the beauty of being on the coastal side of the ACC, means that in theory, we have a nice road to get to the college football playoffs. Once you get to the college football playoffs, it's a playoff. I just watched the Atlanta Braves win the Major League Baseball playoffs after being the worst playoff team to make it to the postseason this year. And anything can happen in a playoff. But our expectations as a fan base are to be competing for or be close to division titles and playing for ACC championships. And we're so off from that right now that it feels like a distant shout to even become a possibility. But that's where we should be. And we need to make sure that our expectations are in line with that, and that we don't have our frame of mind and what we accept as a program change, because we've been hit over the head with the financial bat over the past 4 years and every other excuse that could possibly be made to defend a coaching staff that, after everything came to the carpet here, was not worth defending. So please, let's retool ourselves here. We know where we want to be. We know where we should be as Virginia Tech. And when you look at the numbers financially, which Whit and Babcock hit on the presser, they're not as dire as everyone made them seem. Now, I realize a lot of that has turned around recently. Thank God it has. The work that's been done has been important. And if Fuente's legacy at Virginia Tech is anything, let it be known for the guy that played a part, was a catalyst in this movement to really address some of the funding issues, the facilities issues, and those kind of things. Because I will say, Chuck Amato at NC State, that was one of the great legacies he left for NC State, is when he got to NC State, their press box was basically a double wide trailer in the sky. They had facilities that were falling apart. When Chuck Amato came over from Florida State, that refresh paid dividends years in the future for Tom O'Brien, Dave Doran, even as he sits and, he's got the Murphy football building outside and all those nice buildings. All of that was started with Chuck Amato. So this could be a rebirth of the Hokie football program. And part of this rebirth could be because of good things that Justin Fuente did. Now, it was the right time to let him go. It was past time to let him go. If it was up to me, he would have been gone 2 years ago. That's neither here nor there. He's finally gone. I will say one last thing, and that's this faux pearl clutching about any sort of criticism or happiness that others may be feeling that Justin Fuente lost his job, that I'm hearing from people is so tired, and it's not genuine to me. I mean, you hear so many people come out and say, "Oh, well, I'll never be happy when I hear someone loses his job. I'm above that." Guys, he got paid $8.75 million to get fired. Have you ever gotten paid $8 million to be fired? Are you kidding me? We could be all happy all we want. Fuente's laughing all the way to the bank right now. Don't feel bad for the guy, okay? A lot of this stuff was firmly in his control, and he failed like a lot of coaches do. There's nothing wrong with that. But please don't get on your high horse and look down at people who are happy, because it's been a hard few years for a lot of Hokies, and there is a lot to be happy about with this coming rebirth. We'll call it a rebirth. We're happy to see. I think they made a great hire in JC Price, getting him as the interim head coach. Absolutely love it. There's a lot to be happy about. And you mentioned the new coach coming on. I guess I'll pose this question to you. What are your top three traits that you want to see in a new head coach at Virginia Tech? Because I know I've got three that are extremely important.
Somebody who can sell, build, and unite a football team and a fan base, former players. And I think, we don't need it's not like we need the greatest coach of all time. Mm-mm. There was a story about Mac Brown when he was at Texas, and the governor of Texas at the time, Rick Perry, it was his wife's birthday, and somebody showed up with a helicopter at practice to get Mac Brown and said, "We're going to Rick Perry's wife's birthday party. You need to make an appearance." And his comment was, "Well, I'm trying to get ready for whoever the opponent is." And they're like, "It doesn't matter. You got to go." We're never going to be at that level. But that's what the Texas job is.
Yeah.
The Texas job is campaign, keeping your donors happy. The people that are bringing in the money for the program, you work for them.
Yeah.
Okay. And your coordinators, the guys that you hire, those are the guys, the important people to put into the program to really kind of bring everything together. You sell the program. You're the voice, right? You go out there on the recruiting trail. You're pitching your scheme. You're talking to the media. You're talking to fans. You're talking to former players. You're bringing everybody together, building that excitement. You're the seller. And then you let your coaches coach. And I think that's what we need. Fuente was not that. I don't know if Beamer was to that extent, right? But Beamer was very involved. And I mean, I think Virginia Tech has to find that happy medium, right?
Yeah.
But we definitely need somebody out there who can go in there, shake hands, kiss babies, whenever it needs to be done, without any questions asked, without blinking an eye. Like, oh, this high school coach in, Hampton Roads, or this high school coach in, Henrico, Virginia, Highland Springs, their kid did something great at school. It's their niece's graduation. Oh, his nephew had a slam dunk on the basketball team. Like, those are things that they need to know about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sales job. And so that's how you build these relationships. That's how you go in and establish this relationship. It's all about relationship building in college football in your backyard, which Fuente never cared to do. And that's what Frank Beamer was so good at. That's what Shane Beamer was so good at when he was here.
Yeah.
Bud Foster and all the guys that they had. They could call him up at any time and just shoot the shit, basically. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in a head coach. There's some guys out there. I don't care where they come from. I just want them to be somebody who they can walk into the room, you can feel confident about, and they can also put good coaches in place, but at the same time, make the hard decision when it's not working out.
Yeah.
Like this whole thing with loyalty is what got Justin Fuente fired. Because I really do think if Fuente sits back and takes a year just to sit back and reflect on his time at Virginia Tech, he can look at 3 or 4 different scenarios where he's like, you know what? I wonder if I had done that differently, what would have happened? I wonder if we did this. I wonder if we went this direction. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. You play the what if game. But if you're Fuente and you go to a job and you hire Brad Cornelson as your offensive coordinator, what are you doing?
I don't know. I mean, I think you hit on some good points here. So there seems to be something that I slightly disagree with. I'm seeing around a lot of Hokies, and that's they want a coach with head coaching experience. And I'm a little different there. The kind of experience that I want, I don't care whether this is a head coach or as an assistant coach. I want somebody with extensive experience in big time Power 5 football programs to come on board. I think a lot of the issues that Fuente saw and had was due to inexperience in quote unquote big boy football in the upper Power 5 level. Stuff like hiring the right assistants, I think, is a part of that. I think that comes with the territory. More importantly, and what I think really comes with that is the understanding of what it takes to succeed in the recruiting world in modern football and the kind of go get it attitude, what it takes to always recruit. Recruiting is not a part-time thing. Recruiting is an, I don't feel like it thing. Recruiting is an everyday 365 day. I don't want to say 40 hours a week, because I'm sure you're going to be doing other stuff, but you have to address recruiting daily. Recruiting is the lifeblood of your organizations in Power 5 football. It was clear that it was not as high of a priority for Justin Fuente as it should have been, not only in the results, but some of the stuff we have from people, insiders, from people that are writing these articles. It's very clear that that was outside of his comfort zone. And worst part, exacerbated it. He didn't recruit to shore up that weakness in the way that Mike Young did. And I'm not even sure Mike Young has a real weakness when it comes to recruiting, because honestly, he's got charisma. I mean, he looks like a guy that I would love to hang out with. Whereas Justin Fuente, the personality really isn't there. He seems like more of an introvert. And how many horror stories did we hear of parents coming on their official visits and never even meeting Justin Fuente? Should be unacceptable at this level. Now but introvert or not, that's a lack of effort. It's negligence is what it is.
That's lack of awareness.
Yeah.
Like, you're the head coach. You've got a family there, a kid on an official visit, and you can't even say hello.
I don't even think it's
what are you doing?
Awareness. I mean, he's got to be aware of the fact that he should be saying hello. You know what I mean? So I hate to chalk it up.
If there's anything that you do all day, football game or not, this goes back to the coach, right? Yeah, you're going to show up for the game. You're going to make sure your guys are ready to go. You're going to step in and make the hard decisions when they need to be made. Well, you're a college football coach at a Power 5 level. There's other things you got to do.
Yeah.
Like say hi to the freaking recruits that are in town.
Right. It's just such a weird thing to have to talk about. But how many times did we hear it when he was working? This is not stuff that's come out after. This was stuff that was out 2 and 3 years ago. And I remember just shooting texts to you, panicking, because what message does that send? I mean, that gets out to every single recruit and every single high school football coach in the state of Virginia. And then whether it's fair or not, you get a label. And in this case, sadly, I think it was fair. I think there was a huge lack of effort applied to recruiting, and that started with the top down. And that comes from a lack of understanding of what it takes at the Power 5 level, at the big boy Power 5 level, at the not upper echelon, but the higher tiers of Power 5 where we like to play or say that we play. But since the past 5 years, our actions have not lined up with our words or our mission. Because this is like list? Maybe it's the 6th thing on the top 10 Fuente dropped balls list. And I do think that looking for an assistant with that kind of experience, your Alabamas, your Clemsons, because there are a few out there, most namely in Billy Napier and Charles Huff, who I really like. Those two. Those are probably the top 2 on my list for those very reasons. The other thing I want to hit on, because there's a lot of talk right now. I know, as you've heard, there's a lot of smoke, if you will, national writers, message board insiders, however much you want to pay attention to them, that are pointing to Dave Clawson potentially as being Whit's quote unquote guy. To me, this is going to sound bad. I think Dave Clawson is a fantastic football coach. I think he is absolutely the wrong guy for this job because he brings no juice. And the next guy that we hire has got to bring excitement to this program, both for the recruits in the state and for the fan base. I think that's extremely important. And Dave Clawson doesn't even begin to move that needle. The other issue with Dave Clawson, a guy like Dave Clawson is going to bring most of his staff from Wake Forest. That's just how that's going to work. And let me tell you, I realize it ain't easy to recruit at Wake Forest, but if you were hoping to see improved recruiting numbers fairly quickly from Fuente, I'd be really skeptical of Dave Clawson being that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd be.
I think he's perfect for Wake Forest. Perfect.
It's 2 very different jobs, right?
Oh, it is.
So it's I don't know if I'd be upset if Dave Clawson was the choice. I think at Wake Forest, like you're recruiting an entirely different kind of kid, right? Like you're not going to go out there and compete with Carolina and NC State for the most part. You're competing with Duke and Vanderbilt and kind of those kinds of kids.
Well, that's my exact criticism is how do you go from competing with those kind of guys to all of a sudden overnight, now you recruit at the Power 5 level?
Yeah.
The upper echelon of the Power 5
I think
level.
you can, I think you can figure it out.
To me, it's Fuente 2.0. That's what we banked on with Fuente, and it blew up in our face like an overcooked hand grenade. We said, okay.
I think the difference with Clawson is he's 9-1 in the ACC, which again, the ACC is not very good, but at Wake Forest. So to me, being 9-1 in the ACC is way more impressive than anything you could do at Memphis.
So does that wipe the slate of 8 years of 500 football?
But 500 football is good at Wake. Like that's the thing. You can't compare it to a Virginia Tech result.
Jim Grobe did the exact same thing prior to him.
Right.
So I would just say, if it's that hard at Wake, how have they had 2 people now do it for a long amount of time? I think Wake.
I guess they're good at hiring that kind of coach.
That's what I mean.
They're
by
not dissimilar.
Clawson being a great fit for Wake Forest, because what does Clawson do well that I think would fit in with Virginia Tech? Develops the hell out of his players.
Because he has to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what you do. If you can't recruit,
right.
With Wake Forest, you're basically recruiting with shackles on. That's what you do. The other thing he does is that guy runs a scheme that is hard to stop on offense. And that team has an identity that recruits extremely well to skill sets that fit that scheme. We would know nothing about that at Virginia Tech right now. But if you hire Dave Clawson, to me, that means you've learned nothing from the 6 years of Justin Fuente. And that's all. That's why I would be frustrated. because to me, we need to do this from Justin Fuente. We need to take a hard right turn. And to me, if you're signing on to say, okay, we want to go with Clausen here, because Clausen had one really lights out season with Wake Forest. And I think his best season before that was 8 wins at Wake Forest. To me, that's not enough. That doesn't move the needle for me. If it doesn't move the needle for me, you think that's going to fire up a kid in Richmond who's a junior in high school right now to go play for Wake Forest, 55-year-old coach? I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, I would like to get somebody young, energetic, that can truly sell a program. Clausen doesn't have a program to sell right now. I mean, he's the head coach of Wake Forest.
I think the Wake job is a lot like Northwestern, where I'd take Pat Fitzgerald as my head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Would you not?
I like Pat a lot.
Yeah.
Take him over Clausen.
But they're in very similar situations, right? Because Northwestern's a school that can win 10 games, but it's most likely going to be a very experienced roster. And then the next year, they're going to win 3 games. That happens. And I mean, that's going to happen to Wake next year.
Oh,
because
100%.
Their team is like nothing but seniors. Yeah. So it's an interesting timing standpoint for me with Dave, whether he goes inside the ACC, which I always think is a little weird.
Yeah.
Or goes somewhere else. I think now's the time for him to jump. I mean, he's not going to be hotter if he wants to jump. Because, I mean, he can go and win 4 or 5 games at Wake Forest next year and doesn't have to worry about anything. Like, he's not going to be fired.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's 49-46 since 2014, which is about 500, which is kind of like where you think Wake is going to live. So it is what it is. I mean, I like Napier. I like Huff. Again, I don't think it has to be a guy with head coaching experience. I don't think that hurts.
Do you like those two better than Clausen?
Well, I mean, they're completely different, right?
Totally agree.
Huff is that like that politician, right? Mm-hmm. That guy who, my only question with Huff is he's 6-4 at Marshall. I have no idea how good Marshall has been, but Marshall's been pretty solid. It's not like Marshall's been bad.
That feels like a normal season for Marshall.
Right.
I mean, knowing nothing right now about Marshall.
Who can Huff put around him?
I think that's
we're going to be Huff's coordinators.
Strengths is being an associate head coach at Alabama. You have to imagine he's got an endless list of folks that he would tab up for that job and connections that are probably endless. The thing I will say is that those two for me are so far and away above Clausen. And there's probably people in between Clausen and those two that I would like to see over Clausen, to where that's where my disappointment would come from in Clausen, would only because we're clearly not learning our lessons from the past. And I want that excitement. We need that fresh face. We need a guy who's going to go out there and hammer every door down of every high school in Virginia over the next 3 years. And I just don't see Clausen doing it. And when I look at the staff at Wake Forest right now, especially on that defensive side of the ball, man, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, the defense is really bad.
And I'm not sure.
The guy out there that
most of your recruiting is coming from your assistant coaches. And those are all guys that are unproven recruiters as well. So you're really rolling the dice in a hard way when it comes to Clausen. And what is our biggest area of improvement is the relationship aspect and the recruiting, in my opinion. And that's why when I look at a guy like Billy Napier and a guy like Huff, who've been on staff, Huff's case, Alabama I think he was rated the number 1 recruiter by 247 at some point here recently. Yeah, you got Napier, who, hell of a recruiter. We can see that in the Louisiana's improvement in recruiting numbers, but also his time spent on staff at Clemson and Alabama. Those two guys get the recruiting side of things. And they're not the only two out there that get the recruiting side of things. I mean, you could point to Will Healy in Charlotte, even though results haven't been there. He's got a fun locker room when they win, but that
doesn't get me excited.
But honest to God, I'd probably take Will Healy over Clausen, man. I mean, that's how low I am on Clausen. But it's weird saying that because Clausen is a good coach. He's a good coach.
My top choice for Wake, realistic, is Napier. That's who I would want.
It's Napier or Huff for me. 1A.
The guy that if I could choose who's out there right now, I would go Luke Fickell. But I don't like Luke Fickell's agent, and I just feel like it would always be like on the edge of your seat at the end of each season, whether or not you're going to have a head coach or not.
Yeah.
I
That's
just
going to be
don't think,
unpleasant.
I don't think in the long run, like we'd be able to afford him over a 5 to 10 year period.
Shane, I know you're listening. Come back home.
Shane put that to bed, which I knew he would. I knew he would.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, I mean, I think we probably won't know anything more next week. I think it is interesting that Napier will be in Lynchburg this weekend playing at Liberty or coaching at Liberty, I should say. And, a lot of times, like these head coaches don't make it to campus when they're taking these jobs. Like it's usually like sight unseen. Yes, I agree, blah, blah, blah. It happened with Fuente, I think. And he didn't realize how bad the facilities were when he took the job.
Oh man.
So, I mean, that happens. When he interviewed with Baylor, he didn't actually go to Waco. So, it'll be interesting to see who's watching the tracks and tracking that and what the boards are going to be saying. And I don't follow the boards.
I was going to say, I know your message boards have a sorted past.
But I also think anything that you hear is all just BS because Whit doesn't let anything out of the house. So I feel like it's going to be probably somebody we're not even expecting. That's kind of how I feel about the whole thing. And maybe not, but we'll just kind of see what happens. I do think, we'd probably find out who it's going to be shortly after the UVA game because we've got a top 20 class that we're trying to maintain right now. Potentially add in some guys. I imagine there's going to be some attrition of that class. But we'll just have to see what happens. Also, you got the transfer portal. Guys are going to be entering that portal over the next week or two, going into bowl season. You got to get a jump on that. So somebody's going to come in and they're going to have a lot of work to do because if you look at the senior day participants, I mean, there were some big names on that list. You had Amari Barno, Jordan Williams, Shamari Connor, Jermaine Waller, Ty Daly, Brock Hoffman, Lasita Smith, Silas Zanzi, James Mitchell, Trey Turner, Drake Dooley, Johnny Jordan, John Parker Romo, kicker. I mean, that's a whole lot of starters I just reeled off right there.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance some of those guys are back and there's a good chance none of them are back. So I think that's going to happen, especially, as you have a change of the guard and, maybe guys want to have a prove it year and don't want to stick around and, have to learn a new system with the coach who, maybe they're not interested in playing for. So that's going to be something to watch. So this new guy who comes in, he's going to have his work cut out for him. There's no doubt. But I think, I think it's doable. I think you can come in. I think you can win quickly at Virginia Tech. The ACC is very winnable right now. You've got an experienced Pitt team that's going to fall off next year. Miami, who knows what's going to happen with them. The Coastal is going to be up for grabs. I mean, that's what you know. That's the way it is every year. And really, it kind of looks like the Atlantic's up for grabs too.
Transfer portal. I mean, it really changes the game. I think we look at these coaching transitions through the lens of, a 10-year-old to 15-year-old viewpoint where it felt like 3 to 4 years minimum you would have to wait until a coach really got into his swing. Now with the transfer rule and your ability to identify weaknesses in certain positions and recruit to them with proven players changes the game a little bit. And we'll see where it goes. I'm like you. I don't think it's going to be a huge 3 to 4 year rebuild. I think within 2 years, maybe even next year, make a little bit of noise. Certainly not winning any ACC titles, but it's there. Virginia Tech is prime right now when it comes to facilities, donations, money's on the uptick. The commitment from the administration seems to be there. The path to the championship game is laying in front of you. It is gilded. It is just waiting for somebody to come in here and take it. And oh yeah, you have the best game day atmosphere in college football and the best fan base in the United States waiting to greet you. There's a lot to like about this Virginia Tech job. And it'll be interesting.
And you've got the state of Virginia that has a ton of talent football-wise.
A ton.
The Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
So, it's not like
It'd be great to
It's
get
an
a
impossible
DMV
task.
native in that role, like Charles Huff, who also went to Hampton.
So let's talk about Duke real quick, and then we'll. I have no idea where we're at on time, so we're just gonna have to get rolling.
Yeah, we're going long, so we can hustle.
So Duke, good to get a win at Lane, finally.
Yep.
48-17. I guess we just needed to talk about the Hokies' lack of production. We mentioned the David Hale tweet last week about the lack of 500-yard game since 2018, the loss to Old Dominion. Well, they had 573 yards of total offense last week. So
you're welcome.
We just needed to bring it up.
That's right.
Burmeister threw for 3 touchdowns, career high, finished 9 of 15 for 215. Oftentimes was just thrown to wide open receivers. I mean, the Duke defense was really, really bad. He did leave the game injured for a bit. Kadum came in, went 2 for 367 yards, did miss a wide open Trey Turner in the end zone for a no doubter touchdown. But the Hokies snapped a 3-game losing streak. First win in Lane since their win over Richmond. But you're going against an ACC team that is 1-15 in their last 16 conference games in the worst Power 5 conference in the country. So, that's your grain of salt. The big takeaways for me, I felt like Tech dominated the line of scrimmage. The offensive line, the running game looked like last year's version with Khalil Herbert carrying the ball, except this week it was Raheem Blackshear. Massive holes, by far Blackshear's best game in a Hokie uniform, One ACC player of the week. Kashawn King got into the mix, basically the first time this season, had some big plays. He entered the day with 34 yards rushing and receiving combined. He had 137 yards combined in that game. So big day for King. King and Blackshear both combined for 294 total yards. Burmeister added 71 on the ground. Malachi Thomas didn't really get going, only 7 carries for 10 yards, but he really wasn't needed. I thought the thing that really stood out to me, Tim, and I was just waiting for Duke to go to it, was did they just forget about Mateo Durant?
They must have.
It was like the game plan was to not use their best player on offense.
Yeah.
And I think that's what went wrong. I mean, there was plenty of opportunity for them to get back into that game in the first half. He finished with 10 carries for 33 yards. I mean, it was mind-blowing. They just weren't giving him the ball.
Ridiculous.
So that to me was a big reason they couldn't get going. I mean, I think Duke offense was getting blown up. That offensive line, 4 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss. They did struggle. Hokies did struggle to stop Jordan Moore late in the game, but by that point the game was over. So
yeah,
that was my recap.
That was a good recap. Surprising offensive outburst. Although, if it was going to happen, a team like Duke was who it was going to happen to. And yeah, their lack of use of Durant just made no sense to me at all. If they were going to have a shot to come back at that game, they were going to need to do it on his back, and it just never really materialized. And by the time maybe they could have salvaged anything or started scoring some points, there was no point in giving him the ball. So I thought really poor game planning from Duke. But that's something we've seen all year. They've just looked largely dysfunctional. And Cutcliffe cannot.
You got to think Cutcliffe is gone.
No, you have to.
He's got to be. He's got to be.
I can't see him lasting. And we mentioned Will Healy's name before. I think Duke is an ideal landing spot for Will Healy. You're looking for a guy.
He beat Duke earlier this year.
That's right. Well, that's right. I mean, he's already shown that he can, handle the Blue Devils. But a guy that would really bring some juice, much needed juice to that program, following up in Cut's footsteps. So maybe a landing spot for him. Other than that, it was good to get over 500 yards and the final salvo in Justin Fuente's coaching career at Virginia Tech.
Let's look at week 11 in the ACC before the Miami preview. So Pitt 30, UNC 23 in overtime. Panthers hold on. So got up 23-7 in the first half. UNC comes back like UNC typically does, digs themselves these holes, gets back in the game, and then they lose. And that's exactly what happened. Pickett threw an interception late, almost cost Pitt the game. But threw his 3rd touchdown of the game in overtime, finished with 346 yards, 3 touchdowns. And UNC, I mean, just a really disappointing season for them. By the time they got the ball in overtime, it was unfortunate because it was pouring.
Yeah.
And Pitt did not have to deal with that. It was raining, but it was not raining like it was when UNC got the ball. And they just couldn't get it together. Pitt made them one-dimensional on offense. I think UNC had like 70 yards rushing. And they came out on top.
Yeah, North Carolina continues to be a Jekyll and Hyde team that you can't quite figure out, but none of their results have been good enough to this point when you consider what is a talented roster. And Mac continues to look a little funny in the light, again, doing what Mac does, recruiting extremely well, but the results in the field are not yet matching up to the results off the field on the recruiting trail.
Clemson 44, UConn 7. UConn opened the game with a kickoff return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And then got blanked from there on out. So DJU, another not so great game. 21 for 44, 241, one touchdown, one pick. Only 129 yards rushed for Clemson. UConn's 1-8.
Yeah.
And this offense still struggled. So weird season for Clemson. Louisville 41, Syracuse 3. Just an absolute thrashing.
Shellacking.
Cunningham had 5 touchdowns, 4 through the air. Syracuse couldn't move the ball at all. I think Schrader had like 40 yards passing, which is fun to think about, the game he had against Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Sean Tucker, probably not super happy with his performance.
I was waiting for that.
Wasn't terrible, but 19 carries for 95 yards, but 3 points, not going to get it done. Dino Babers, I have a feeling that job's coming over and open. What about Justin Fuente at Syracuse? That'd be fun. FSU 31, Miami 28. I know I said last week maybe Diaz should come back, but I changed my mind.
Yeah, he gone.
I think he's probably done. Miami had a great opportunity to win the game. It's 4th and 14. And you allow Jordan Travis to complete a pass on you that a few plays later results in a touchdown. Miami loses. Van Dyke played well in the second half, not so good in the first half, had a couple of big mistakes. Miami took a while for them to even get back in the game. But at the end of the day, they still should have won the game.
Yeah.
And Miami's just struggling to run the ball. 43 yards on 23 carries. That's not going to get it done. A really bad loss for Miami, especially after some success there over the previous 3 weeks. So 2 5-5 Miami and Virginia Tech teams playing against each other for winner gets a bowl berth. How the mighty have fallen.
Oh, yeah. Usually it's just us laughing at Miami, at least in the recent beginnings of the ACC. But now, yes, both teams the past few years have been mired in the pit. And this is a perfect game to cap off what is a disappointing few-year run under Fuente for the Hokies, and certainly equally as disappointing but much shorter run for Manny Diaz and the Hurricanes.
Boston College 41, Georgia Tech 30. This game was tight, and then finally BC pulled away. Djokovic looked back to his old self. Actually, it looked like he had been working on his speed. He had 71 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns.
I did not expect to see that version during that game after what we had saw from him the week prior. Just very strange. And
he also had
all around
310 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. So he had a huge day.
Huge day.
But I had never seen that kind of rushing ability out of him. I mean, he can get out of the pocket, but he was moving.
He was getting downfield. And thank you, Phil, for completely screwing up my pick last week after you sandbagged it against Virginia Tech. So
4th time this year, Georgia Tech has given up over 500 yards. They also had a lot of penalties for 95 yards. So not going to get it done. Notre Dame 28, UVA 3. Big story here. Brennan Armstrong did not play. Gave it a go before the game, but quickly called it off. I'd say it's UVA being cautious, but he threw like 5 passes in warmups and like couldn't continue. So I think it seems like it's a pretty significant injury. Obviously the Notre Dame game really didn't mean anything. The critical matchup is this week against Pitt, which could be for the Coastal. If UVA wins and then beats Virginia Tech the week following. But we'll see. I mean, I think it's a little bit more serious than that. If he can go against Pitt, seems like he's probably going to be limited, so that's something to watch. But otherwise, UVA just got dominated in every facet of that game. And then Wake Forest 45, NC State 42. This one lived up to the hype. Took a while for both teams to get going. But once they did, floodgates kind of opened. But what was your biggest takeaway from this one, Tim?
Just NC State defensive injuries. I mean, they lost 2 or 3 more players during this game, and it seemed like as they lost more players, the depth just wasn't there to hold what was a really good Wake Forest offensive attack. I thought they did a good job on Hartman, except on third downs. Hartman's stat line wasn't too impressive, very inaccurate. I thought they pressured him well. The penalty disparity was a little strange to me. NC State called a really tight game from the officials. Wake, not so much. Seemed like Wake holds on just about every play with their long mesh offense that they have. And then at the end, just a shame that the officials didn't give that onside kick to NC State, because to me, it looked like the kick went past the 10 yards.
Pretty close.
Just real crappy that game was decided in that manner. But, you know, it lived up to the billing. It was a great game between 2 really good teams, and Wake Forest just had a little bit more and made, I guess, plays and bigger moments on third downs than NC State had done. And, you know, that got them the game. And I think a crucial interception or 2 from Devin Leary in that game really sealed the deal for the Wolfpack.
All right, let's jump into the Miami game. So before talking about the game, something to note here, Miami did fire their athletic director, Blake James.
Could
so
not
you'd
be
have to
comfortable
think
for Diaz now.
Yeah, you'd have to think there's going to be a change at the head coaching position. Diaz is 19-15 in 3 years, 5-5 this year. Just lost to a bad FSU team, and the school president a few weeks ago said that he's planning to increase involvement, and that the university is committed to building championship caliber teams at the U. So something to watch there. Obviously, on the VT side, first game without Fuente. JC Price is going to be the interim, former Hokie defensive lineman. Just kind of looks like a football guy.
God, doesn't he?
Looks like he belongs on Scott Satterfield's staff. Like he's just bashing guys with his head on the sideline, no helmet.
Yeah, the bridge of his nose isn't bloodied enough right now.
Yeah. I mean, just great selection for the interim.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at Miami, had an up and down season. Lost the Eric King for the year. Turned to freshman Tyler Van Dyke, who has struggled at times, but then also looks really good at times. They lost Cameron Harris at running back. They struggle to run the ball consistently. They struggle against the pass on defense. The defense has given up about 30 points per game. But they did have a good stretch before their most recent loss to Florida State. They beat NC State, Pitt, and Georgia Tech in 3 straight weeks. All those games very close. Really, any game Miami plays in is close. And they're in every game. The struggle with Miami is holding on to the football.
Right.
Specifically fumbling. Van Dyke can really make some boneheaded passes at times, but they seem to find themselves in the game at the end. Whether they win or lose is simply a coin flip. FSU, they had them at 4th and 14. Somehow FSU got a first down. They ended up scoring a touchdown, winning the game. Against UVA, they got in range for a 30-something yard field goal to win the game. Blocked it left. Terrible kick. UNC had the ball with 2:46 to go, down 3. They're in field goal range. Van Dyke throws an interception. So you just got these stupid mistakes. All 3 conference losses, they easily could have won those games. Sounds like another team that we covered, Tim, that just struggles to put games away that they should be winning. Their other 2 losses, Alabama, Michigan State, they weren't really in those games. App State almost pulled an upset, but they were able to survive that one. Long story short, Miami plays reckless. They're sloppy, but they're resilient. They find themselves in the game for the most part with the shot to win. So I think we should expect the game to be close. I think it will be competitive. It'll probably be kind of ugly, but what should we expect from 2 5-5 teams at this point in the season? But my keys to the game, Tim, first one for Virginia Tech, make Miami one-dimensional. When Miami really struggles, it's when they can't get going on the ground. And last week, almost no production at running back. Took them a really long time to get back into that football game, and it cost them down the stretch there. Second is to be opportunistic off of turnovers. They're going to turn the ball over.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to happen. They should just throw the turnover chain across the field, bring it to our sideline, because it is a guarantee that they are going to turn the football over. And when that does happen, the Hokies have to take advantage. They have to score points. It's not a stout Miami defense. This isn't a Miami defense that's going to scare you. It can play good in spots, but for the most part, it's vulnerable. There are plays there for the making. Hokies should be able to score points, but making sure whether it's Miami penalty, turnover, whatever it may be, that you're taking advantage of that. And then my third key here, Tim, running the football.
Man,
Burmeister's a hit away from being out of the game. We've seen that 2 straight weeks.
Very true.
And Malachi Thomas, he emerged in the Syracuse and Georgia Tech games, took a step back last week, but then you had the emergence of Raheem Blacksburg, Sean King. So for whatever reason, Virginia Tech has found this run game over the last few weeks, and they look like a much better offense because of it. I don't think we're going to see the guys running wide open in the secondary like we did against Duke. No. Miami's not that bad. But, being able to pound the rock, utilize the backs in the passing game, that's what really kind of opened up the offense against Duke. What has made them look better over the last few weeks, control the clock, take care of the football. And Virginia Tech should be in pretty good shape. And, honestly, defensively, I think they'll be fine as well. I think, Van Dyke is capable of lighting you up, but he's also capable of making a really, really bad decision in a key moment. So
yeah. Their strength is passing on offense, and the strength of our defense is in that secondary. And I do see our secondary as a ball hawking secondary, which I think maybe we'll be able to feast off of some mistakes from Van Dyke, which we've seen him make. You hit on a really important key, which was if we can keep them as far away from that 130 average on the ground as possible and force them into, throwing the ball, maybe even playing from behind. If we can get an early score, things could look good for the Hokies. It's just, it's always the question when we look at Virginia Tech of is our offense going to give us enough in this game? Are they going to be able to give us enough in this game? It's hard to really say after the performance against Boston College being so poor. Obviously, seeing improvement against Duke to be expected. Miami's defense is a little better than Duke's, and we'll see how much of a challenge they present. It's always going to be an issue with that Virginia Tech offense, and we'll see what we're able to do on the ground. Will be key, obviously, because we can only count on Braxton Burmeister through the air so much. But I like you. We've seen Malachi, we've seen Blackshear, we've now seen King pop a little bit. Right now, the offensive line seems to really be moving people on the interior in the rushing game. So yeah, let's see if we can ride that wave on to a win down there in Miami.
So let's jump into the Week 12 picks. Who do you got for this one? It's a 7.5 points spread in Miami's favor.
So the spread's difficult because this can go one of two ways. J.C. Price can absolutely fire the team up and provide a voice and a motivation that they haven't had to this point. Or because the players could have been so attached to Justin Fuente, and many seem to care for him at a deep level. He seemed to really have some good relationships with those players. It could kill them, and it could take the wind out of their sails. I'm going to be optimistic here, and I say Virginia Tech wins the game. So obviously I will take Virginia Tech to beat the spread.
Yeah, I think I do expect these guys to come out and play strong just from a pride standpoint. Kind of like, I don't know if it's an I told you so, but to want to go out with a bang, whether that's for Fuente or whatever they have to do to rally. But I'm going to put my faith in J.C. Price and the Hokies. I think the guys are going to be fit to win this game. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think if Trey Turner is literally going to drive in a car down to Miami to play a football game, that shows you the buy-in that these guys have right now, even in a 5-5 season. And to get that win, pick up some momentum going into next week. Big game against the old Who's. But yeah, I like Virginia Tech. I think I'm going to go 34-31 Hokies. JPR kicks a walk-off field goal as time expires. That's how I'm seeing the game go down.
I like that timeline.
Louisville at Duke. Louisville is a 20.5 point favorite, Tim.
Makes sense after what I saw. Makes sense.
I mean, there's only been one game where Duke has not lost by almost 30 points in the conference, which was to Georgia Tech. So I take it you're going to take Louisville. I'm taking Louisville.
That's correct.
Wake Forest at Clemson. Clemson is a 4.5 point favorite.
This one's tough because if any defense can provide a resurrection for that Clemson offense, it is Wake Forest. Not a lot to be happy about on the defensive side of the football. The other side of that token is if any defense can neutralize the Wake Forest attack, it is the Clemson defense. Right now, did you say Clemson was favored 4.5?
Yeah.
I'm liking Clemson 4.5. I'll take them to cover the spread.
I'm going to go Wake. I think this is the year they get over the hump against Clemson. I think NC State's a more dangerous team for Wake Forest than Clemson is. Clemson, they put up 44 against UConn, but their offense looked like garbage for most of the game. So
UConn's probably the worst team in Division I football right now.
Another weird spread, which Jim Mora, by the way, just took over the UConn head coaching job. I don't know if you heard that one.
I didn't know that. There you go. Talking Jim Mora Jr. here?
Jim Moore Jr. Yeah.
All right. Way to go.
So that'll be interesting. Florida State at Boston College. Boston College is a 1.5 point favorite. Weird line. Who you got?
Give me Boston College to cover the spread. I'm just thinking Chestnut Hill. It's going to be cold. Florida boys, not a lot to play for right now. Boston College, we saw the resurgence of Djokovic, I should say. I expect more of that. So don't let me down, Phil.
I feel like BC, this is probably like a history spread here because they've always struggled with Florida State to beat Florida State. But from what I saw out of Djokovic last week, I'm taking Boston College.
Yeah.
Especially at home. Georgia Tech at Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish are a 17.5 point favorite. Tough line.
It is tough. Buzz. Give me Georgia Tech to beat the spread. Something about this just feels like one of those Notre Dame games where they win by 10 points and they don't look all that great. And Georgia Tech has I don't know. They seem like they come up in these spots to play up towards their competition a little bit. And I expect Swaggy G to go out there and give it all he's got. So give me the bees.
I'm going to take Georgia Tech as well. I think 17.5 is too many points.
It is.
Just don't feel good about that. UVA at Pitt. Pitt is a 14.5 point favorite.
Do we know the status of Armstrong yet?
We don't. That's the make or break on this game.
It is.
Because without Armstrong, I would take Pitt all day.
No brainer. But on the flip side, with Armstrong, no brainer. I'm taking UVA to beat that.
So let's make this let's say that we have the right to change this pick.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Because we don't know.
Yeah.
And I imagine the line is going to change.
It should move quite a bit.
So
I'll tell you right now. I mean, it's simple as if Armstrong plays, I'm taking UVA almost to win the game. That's how strongly I feel about it.
It'll be close, but I don't think he's going to be healthy, 100% healthy either.
Right.
Which makes me lean Pitt.
Good point. That's a good point.
Pitt to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's leave it as is.
Okay.
I'm going to take UVA. I'm going to take UVA.
Okay.
For now.
For now, I would also take UVA.
Update our pick. Okay.
Yeah, you can throw a Cav logo over my name and I'll vomit when I see it. But
I feel like if Armstrong is a go, that line will move down to like 8.5.
yeah, that feels right for that.
Syracuse at NC State. NC State is an 11.5 point favorite.
Oh, NC State all day. They're going to come out still fighting for a 9-win.
Last week's Syracuse game.
They're coming out fighting for a 10-win football season. Still got a lot to play for. Syracuse last week. What the hell? That NC State defense is still good. Wake Forest makes everybody look silly. So give me the Pack to cover the spread.
And what's your wild card game of the week?
So I haven't actually looked ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and pick one on my phone right now. If you don't mind.
I didn't either. So I can give one to you.
Okay, do that.
I am going to take Michigan State at Ohio State. Michigan State is 19.5 point underdog.
What?
I mean, what does Vegas know that we don't? Because that seems like, that seems like fraud.
You serious, Clark?
How can you have a 19.5 point line for a one-loss team?
I don't know.
Ohio State hasn't even looked that great.
That's the part I'm confused about. They're acting as if they've got Ted Ginn Jr. at wide receiver and Troy Smith at quarterback. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. That seems mighty too wide to me. So I think you're making a good call there. I'm going to look and dip in the SEC well. That's been good to me as of late. So, I'm thinking about little beams here right now. Auburn at South Carolina. Auburn's a 7.5 point favorite. I am not going to pick against anyone with the last name of Beamer. So give me the Gamecocks to beat that spread.
Wow. Now, Auburn had a Matt Ryan-esque Super Bowl loss last week. Not with as much on the line, but up 28-3 against Mississippi State and blew the game.
Yep.
So you're taking
Bo Nix maybe
South
hurt.
Khaki.
South Khaki, indeed.
So what does that mean? Does that mean we get to see Demetrius Davis, or is there somebody else?
I don't know. I think I was just browsing the Twitter feed earlier today and saw he was hurt.
What was it? 7.5?
7.5.
Okay. South Khaki 7.
I don't know. I'd be interested in seeing D play if he was the next man up. I'm not sure if he is or isn't. I know if he played for Virginia Tech, he would be quote unquote not ready. So
yeah,
shout out to Taj Bullock.
So that's our show. Any Tim, any final words before we wrap this up?
Buckle up. Buckle up. Nobody knows what's going on. Whit plays everything close to the vest. Don't believe anything you hear. It's all smoke screens. I wouldn't be surprised if we woke up one morning to a text that's saying that Virginia Tech has its new head football coach within the week. That's the kind of silliness that you can expect from these sort of searches. And the way everything's gone down to this point, we didn't expect Justin Fuente to be let go before December 15th. That happened on the Blue on a random Tuesday. Maybe the coaching search is buttoned up as quickly as the last coach was seemingly let go out of the blue. So hang tight, Hokies.
Possibly.
Don't lose faith.
Yeah. I don't think we'll have a head coach by the time we do this next week. But could be wrong. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who knows?
Maybe.
But thanks for listening. If you could go ahead and leave us a review, that would be great. 5 stars, preferably. We are on YouTube now. So if you prefer to listen to your podcast that way, you've got a resource on YouTube. You can see our smiling, beautiful faces. And they are beautiful, especially mine. But yeah, thanks for listening. Go Hokies, beat Miami, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Go get them, JC.